Hello, this is Liza McClanahan, State Chair of Common Cause Florida. Today, we're going to talk about Florida's recount process and how you can participate as a nonpartisan observer. If you did not sign up on our Google form, please send an email to florida@commoncause.org. Include your full name, best telephone number to reach you, and the county in which you wish to observe as a nonpartisan observer. Again, that's florida@commoncause.org. The recount that's taking place is being done by county canvassing boards. So this presentation will tell you what a canvassing board is, how we determine a recount, what the recount process looks like, and its timeline. So I'm going to spoil it all by giving it to you in one slide at the very front. On noon, Saturday, November 10th, the 67 supervisors of elections provided to the Division of Elections their first unofficial results of the general election of 2018. Then the Secretary of State had to do a little math, and if he determined that the vote difference between candidates was less than 0.5%, he needed to order a machine recount of the ballots. The notice of a public meeting of a canvassing board then became as soon as possible, rather with a specified date and time. So the supervisors of elections are required to post on their website, on the front page, homepage, that they are conducting a recount of an election. That recount was a machine recount and must be completed by Thursday, November 15th at 3 o'clock, and this becomes the second unofficial results of the general election. Then the Secretary of State gets to do math again, and if the difference between two candidates is less than 0.25%, a manual recount is ordered. The information from that recount, combined with the overseas ballots that are due on November 16th, are combined to make the official returns, which are presented to the Division of Elections at noon, Sunday, November 18th. On Saturday around 2 o'clock, the Secretary of State determined that there would be a recount in the U.S. Senate race, the Commissioner of Agriculture race, the governor's race, and State Senate 18. Previously, determination had made for State House 26 and State House 89. So what does the canvassing board do? It canvasses the vote by mail ballots. In 2014, they canvassed vote by mail ballots that were missing a signature and the new cure process. And in 2016, they added the mismatched signatures on the vote by mail process and its cure process. And from the 2000 election, beginning in 2002, we have provisional ballots for those voters whose eligibility had been questioned and could not be determined at the time they cast their ballot. The canvassing board certifies the elections to the Department of State, and then they provide a conduct of election report to the Division of Elections on how things went. Here are additional activities of the canvassing board. We've been through a lot of these activities already, but note that at the bottom is an audit. Because we're doing a full recount, we do not have to do a manual audit post-election. Logic and accuracy tests are mentioned here. At the very beginning of the election, we ran logic and accuracy tests to program for the general election and all of its voting methods. So for a recount, they need to do a logic and accuracy test again. They take a predetermined outcome for the races that are to be recounted, and they take a test deck separate from the ballots that they need from the actual election, and they run them through the equipment after the election management system has been reprogrammed. They need to reprogram it to read only those elections for the recount and to output the over and under votes. So they run these test ballots through that have no votes on them, over votes on them, and expected outcomes. They compare them after they've tabulated all three methods of voting. And if it comes out okay, then they can start the machine recount. The members of the canvassing board are the county supervisor of elections, a board of county commission member, usually the chair, but somebody who's not on the ballot that election, and a county judge who is the chair of the canvassing board. If any of these individuals cannot serve, alternates have been named previous to this process, or the circuit judge can name a replacement for the county judge. These meetings are open to the public. Others in attendance may be the county attorney, the supervisor of elections staff. There may be an attorney representing the supervisor of elections. And in the case of a recount, there are official representatives of the parties and the candidates whose races are being recounted. The canvassing board schedule is as soon as possible. Again, they posted on the homepage of their website and have also posted in conspicuous places on the county campus that are available 24/7 for the public to know that they were meeting and how often they're meeting and where they're meeting. So please check this information before you go to observe. The place where they normally hold a canvassing board meeting may not be where they're holding the recount. Not all members of the canvassing board need to be present. For a recount, 2 of the 3 need to be present at all times, and when decisions are made, 3 members of the canvassing board, all of them, need to be present. There may be an agenda which will include public comment. Please make a copy for us, and there may be further instructions that are provided in writing. The canvassing board meetings are recorded by a minute taker, or they may be recorded by videotape. Please make sure that you get permission before taking pictures or recording yourself. As I mentioned, the role of the county canvassing board is to certify the election. So here's the timeline for that. On election night, we had the first reports every 30 minutes after the polls closed, and then updated every 45 minutes. All precinct returns were due by 2 a.m. The first unofficial results were due to the Division of Elections noon on Saturday, November the 10th. The next unofficial results are due on November 15th, 3 p.m. Those are the second unofficial returns. And then the official returns certified by the county canvassing board are due noon on Sunday, the 18th. All these dates existed before we had a recount. And then the state will certify the elections through its election canvassing commission, which meets starting at 9 a.m. on November 20th. They certify the federal, state, and multi-county races. The election canvassing commission is made up of the governor and 2 cabinet members. So a recount is determined if there's 0.5% or less difference between 2 candidates in a race. It's called a machine recount. Only the Secretary of State can order a recount for federal, state, and multi-county races. The exceptions for holding a recount are if a defeated or eliminated candidate requests in writing that the recount not be conducted. The county canvassing boards or a local board responsible for certifying an election are responsible for ordering recounts in all other races. You may find that in addition to the races determined by the Secretary of State, that you have local recount races occurring also. This is a machine recount. The logic and accuracy test will follow a reprogramming of the election management software to read only the races involved in the recount and to output the overvotes and the undervotes. It's up to the supervisor of elections to determine whether they're going to run all ballots through a central county machine or to divide them up by the type of ballots that were cast. The vote by mail ballots may go through the central tabulation machine that was used as it was in the election, and then the early vote and the election day votes can go through the precinct tabulators. There are two major equipment manufacturers who are certified in the state of Florida, Dominion and ES&S. I'm going to provide you with a copy of the equipment that's used in your county so you can see what equipment they're using. We're looking for information about the number and pieces of equipment they're using and how they're designating its use. There are 67 counties and there are 67 different ways to do an election. So there are going to be 67 different ways to do a recount. The ballots with over or under votes in the affected races are going to be set aside in case there's a need for a manual recount. The results of the machine recount are the second unofficial results due on Thursday, November 15th at 3 o'clock. So here's a definition of an overvote and an undervote. The overvote is when a voter designates more choices than allowable in a race on their ballot. In the case of the recounts ordered by the Secretary of State, there is only a single choice that can be made. There are no multiple choices in those races. In the undervote, the voter made no choice or fewer than the number of allowable choices in the race on their ballot. Again, in the races ordered by the Secretary of State to be recounted, the selection was for one. There were no multiple choices to which the voter could undervote. The Secretary of State will review the second unofficial results on Thursday at 3 o'clock, do some more math, and if he determines that there's a 0.25% difference between the candidates or less, they will order a manual recount. Here there are two exceptions. If the candidate who would lose does not wish for there to be a manual recount, they can place that in writing. Or if the number of over and under votes is fewer than the number of votes would not change the outcome of the election, they do not have to do the manual recount. This hand count is of the overvotes and the undervotes that were set aside during the machine recount. Those are the only ballots that are examined. These results are combined with the overseas ballots, which were due on Friday, November 16th, and combined to make the official returns, which are submitted on Sunday, November 18th at noon. So here again is the complete timeline for the certification of elections. We've already had the first unofficial results on Saturday the 10th at noon. We're working to complete machine recounts for Thursday, November 15th at 3 o'clock. The overseas ballots will be canvassed after Friday, November 16th when they are due and combined to make the official results on Sunday, November 18th at noon. Then the State Elections Canvassing Commission, made up of the governor and 2 cabinet members, will meet beginning at 9 a.m. on Tuesday the 20th to certify the federal, state, and multi-county office results. You are a member of the public and you're welcome to attend these meetings as a nonpartisan observer. We encourage you to ask questions. Recognizing that you do not have an official role, there are official representatives from the parties and the candidate, and they can ask more detailed questions and object to the activities of the canvassing board. We're just asking you to take notes and observe the process. But please understand what the process is and ask those kinds of questions. Do not touch any ballots, do not touch any equipment. When the canvassing board is meeting, seek recognition from the chair before speaking. And if any instructions are provided from the supervisor of elections, please follow those. And at all times, be respectful. Again, we're asking you to be a nonpartisan observer of the recount process. I'm going to ask you to share with us your contact information so we can give you additional information that will be helpful in this process. So send it to florida@commoncause.org along with your full name, your telephone number, that's the best way to reach you, and your county so that we know where you can be assigned. We're going to share with you a Google Drive folder that has frequently asked questions, a copy of the timeline for the recount process. We'll share with you the equipment that's in use by the various county supervisor of elections offices. We'll share with you a Google Sheet to sign up for a shift. We ask that you only have 2 people at a time covering these shifts. And the Google Sheet is by county so that you can quickly find a space that's available. We'll also share with you a Google form to make a report. I'm going to share that with you in just a second. So please give us access to your contact information so we can share this additional information with you. So here's a sample of the Recount Observer Report. This is a PDF I've included in the Google Drive, but I would prefer that you fill out the Google form when you return home. It's very hard to read people's handwriting. So we're going to want to know the county you're working in, your name, the date of your shift and the time of your shift. Again, we talked about how canvassing board members are to be present, 2, during the whole process, and 3, if decisions are being made. So depending upon the date and time that you are there, the names of the canvassing board members who are present will change. We're also looking for the supervisor of elections staff who were responsible for the process. We don't need the whole roster of employees. We're just looking for the folks who are in charge. And these may also be the people that you can direct your questions to as you try and understand the process and relay that information back to us. It is not nonpartisan for you to introduce yourself to the other people present, so please introduce yourself to the party or candidate representatives so that when they're speaking at official canvassing board meetings, you understand who they're representing and the questions that they're making. We'll want to know the races for the recount, including those local races. So again, some counties may only have the races that were determined by the Secretary of State. Other counties will have additional races that needed to be recounted at the county level. We're looking for information about the equipment in use, so I'm providing you the equipment we expect them to use, but we need to know the numbers of high-speed counters, the number of precinct tabulators that are used for the various ways of voting: vote by mail, early voting, and election day. The supervisor of election staff may provide you with information about how many ballots they're able to count in an hour on their high-speed vote by mail centralized counters or on their precinct counters that they're using for early voting and election day. You might be able to count it yourself. It will help them with their long-term logistics math that they need to do to make sure that they meet the 3 o'clock deadline on Thursday, November 15th. You may also want to find out the number of output ballots, the number of over and under votes that are being determined in this process. They may provide a number that is cumulative from the day they started the recount, or you may get a number for the time period that you're there or for the day that you're there. Please indicate that if possible. There are other ballots that are involved in the election process. They're called duplicate ballots. When people get their vote by mail ballots, they put it on the kitchen table and promptly put a jar of marmalade on top of it. And that sticky mess cannot go through the high-speed scanner. So our statutes allow for a duplicating board. 2 members of the supervisor of election staff from different parties can start with the original damaged document and make a true copy that can be tabulated. So one of the duplicating board members will read out the races that were cast on the damaged ballot to a person who's marking a new duplicate ballot. They are numbered somewhere on them so they can always be married up and matched up. And then the new duplicate ballot is tabulated and the damaged ballot is saved. Ballots can also be damaged in the processing and opening by the supervisor of elections. So you may have new duplicate ballots as ballots are being run through the high-speed scanners and the precinct scanners during the recount period. So you'll want to watch and observe the duplicating board do its work and how they marry up and confirm that they've made a true copy of the ballot. There's also a process of making duplications based on voter intent. So voters sometimes mark their ballots in mysterious ways. They circle the oval rather than filling it in. They cross things out. They don't line up the lines. They swirl around and they write things on their ballot. And so the canvassing board determines what the voter's intent was. They use a rule that was created after the 2000 elections and has been updated to include all these various ways that we have seen voters try to change their mind or indicate their true intent. And once that intent is determined by the canvassing board, a duplicate ballot is made of that determination so that it can be run through the tabulating machine and included in the results. We'll want you to record the various discussions and decisions made by the canvassing board. Again, it takes 3 members, the full complement, to make a decision. And because this is a very fluid situation, the next meeting and time would be nice to know because they may need to expand or contract their timeline in order to meet the deadline. Thanks for listening to this presentation. Please write to florida@commoncause.org if you have any questions, and to share with us our contact information so we can share the information on shifts and background materials for your education.